I want to start this deep dive by taking you out of your current surroundings, whether you're, commuting at the gym or sitting at your desk, and transporting you to a very specific, very visceral moment in history.
Okay.
I want you to close your eyes for a second if you can, and just picture a tent.
And we're not talking about a nice glamping tent, right? This is heavy canvas pitched on frozen, muddy ground.
Exactly. It's the front lines of a brutal war in Germania.
Hmm.
It is pitch black outside, the dead of winter. It's late at night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, when the silence is just heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Inside this tent, by the flickering light of a single sputtering oil lamp, sits a man. He's huddled over a scroll. And this man happens to be, by every quantifiable metric of his time, the most powerful human being on the planet.
It's a scene that feels like it belongs in a Ridley Scott movie, doesn't it? The sheer contrast between that immense power and the stark, cold reality of his surroundings.
It really does. We are talking, of course, about Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. The year is roughly 170 A.D. And I think it's important to set the stage of what his life was actually like at this moment.
Yeah.
Because when we hear emperor, we think luxury, grapes, people fanning you with palm fronds.
Right, but that was not Marcus's reality at all. At this specific moment, he is surrounded by absolute unmitigated chaos. His empire, which he is responsible for protecting, is being attacked by barbarian tribes along the borders.
And inside the empire, it's even worse.
Yeah, there is a horrific plague, the Antonine Plague, sweeping through Rome, killing his citizens by the thousands. We're talking literally piling bodies in the streets.
And it doesn't end there.
Yeah.
His treasury is effectively empty from the wars. He's dealing with betrayals from his closest allies who smell blood in the water.
And there are rumors swirling constantly about his wife's infidelity. The weight of the entire known world is just crushing him.
And you have to consider the psychological toll. He didn't even ask for this job. He was adopted into it. He was by nature a philosopher who was forced to be a warrior king.
So you have this man under maximum pressure. The natural reaction for anyone in that position, even an emperor, would be to crack.
To scream, to drink himself into a stupor, to find a scapegoat, to execute, just to relieve the stress.
Not just to despair, to curl up and give up.
Exactly. But in that tent, amidst the mud and the blood, he isn't doing any of that. He's writing. And he isn't writing a speech for the Senate to spin the war. He isn't writing a manifesto for the public to secure his legacy.
He's writing a private journal, a document meant strictly for his own eyes.
Right. It's the text we know today as Meditations. And right there, he writes down a maxim that essentially hacks the source code of human existence.
It is arguably one of the most powerful sentences ever written in the history of Western thought. He writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
What stands in the way becomes the way. That is the hook. That is the core idea we are unpacking today. We are doing a deep dive into the book, The Obstacle is the Way, The Timeless Art of Turning Trials into Triumph by Ryan Holiday.
And I think it's important to be clear right off the bat, this isn't just a history lesson about some dead Roman guy.
Far from it. This deep dive is about deconstructing an ancient philosophy, Stoicism. But we aren't doing it in an academic, dusty library sort of way. We are not going to debate metaphysics.
We are looking at this as an operating system for modern life.
I love that term, an operating system. Because if this mental framework worked for a Roman emperor dealing with wars, plagues, and betrayal, it could probably help us deal with a rude boss.
Right, or a failed startup or a traffic jam. That's the whole premise. Ryan Holiday essentially takes the wisdom of the great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and he updates it.
He strips away the toga and the archaic language.
Exactly, and he proves their relevance by weaving in stories from more recent history. We're going to talk about John D. Rockefeller, Amelia Earhart, Ulysses S. Grant, Steve Jobs, people who didn't just survive obstacles, but thrived because of them.
It's a complete inversion of how we normally see the world. Usually we see an obstacle, a lack of money, a physical limitation, a competitor, and we say, well, that's it, path blocked. Time to give up.
Or we try to go around it.
Right. But this book argues that the obstacle is the path. The thing blocking you is actually the fuel.
And because this is a pretty dense philosophy and we want to give you a real toolkit here, we're going to break this deep dive down exactly how the book does. There are 3 critical disciplines.
Right. It's a 3-step process. First, there is perception. That's how we look at and understand what's happening to us.
Then there's action. That's the energy, the creativity, and the persistence we use to break the problem down.
And finally, will. That's the inner strength to handle what we can't change. Perception, action, will.
It's a cycle. You perceive, you act, and you endure. And if you can master all three, you become something pretty formidable.
You become, as the Stoics would say, invincible.
Right. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can stop you.
So let's start at the beginning. Part 1, perception.
Okay, so perception is tricky because we tend to think that we see the world exactly as it is. We think we're like cameras just recording objective data.
Sure, seems right.
But the Stoics, and modern neuroscience for that matter, would argue that we don't. We see our interpretation of the world.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I see things pretty clearly. If I walk out to my car and I see a flat tire, that's a fact. It's rubber, it's flat, it's there.
You see a flat tire, yes. That is the objective event. The observing eye sees a tire with no air. But immediately after that, in a split second, maybe even faster, your perceiving eye takes over.
Right.
And what is the narrative that starts playing in your head?
Well, instantly I think, this is a disaster. I'm going to be late for that meeting. My boss is going to be angry. I'm going to get fired. My day is ruined. Why does this always happen to me? I have the worst luck.
Exactly. That is the story you tell yourself. That is subjective. The tire didn't say your day was ruined. The tire didn't say you have bad luck. You did.
So the discipline of perception is about rigorously separating the event, the tire, from the story, my day is ruined.
Precisely. It's about stripping away the emotional baggage we heap onto facts. It's about being cooler, calmer. The observing eye just sees data. The perceiving eye sees problems, insurmountable odds, and personal attacks.
And the master of this discipline, someone Holiday highlights right out of the gate, is John D. Rockefeller.
Yeah, and I love this story because we usually think of Rockefeller as this old, withered, billionaire titan of industry in a top hat. But the story Holiday tells is from when he was just a kid, basically.
Right, he was barely starting out.
He was a young bookkeeper in Cleveland, Ohio, and his background wasn't exactly privileged. His dad was a traveling salesman, an alcoholic, and essentially a criminal, a pitchman who abandoned the family frequently.
So Rockefeller is working for, 50 cents a day. He's 18 years old. And then the Panic of 1857 hits.
And just for context for you, because Panic of 1857 sounds like a chapter in a textbook, this was not just a bad week on the stock market. This was a massive financial crisis. It was a depression.
Devastating.
Imagine if tomorrow the banking system froze, businesses failed overnight, grain prices plummeted so farmers were destitute, and westward expansion stopped cold. It was chaos.
Imagine being 18, finally getting your foot in the door of the finance world, thinking you're on your way up, and the entire economy just collapses.
Most people panicked. They sold everything, they quit, they ran, they drank to numb the stress. Rockefeller, he did the opposite.
He had this quality called sang-froid.
Which is just a fantastic word.
It really is.
It literally means cold blood. But in this context, it means extreme coolness under pressure. He kept his head while everyone else was losing theirs.
So instead of seeing the panic as a disaster, that would ruin him.
He chose to look at it as an opportunity to learn. He called it the school of adversity.
So he's just watching.
He's watching the older, more experienced businessmen panic. He's watching them make mistakes. He saw that speculation led to disaster. He saw that the market was unpredictable and that emotion was a liability.
He realized that when people are emotional, they make bad decisions, and that creates opportunities for rational people.
Right. He saved his money while others were spending wildly or selling assets for pennies on the dollar. He just watched and learned and saved.
And because he was calm, because he perceived the situation objectively, he was positioned to strike when the recovery started.
That's the key distinction. He didn't succeed in spite of the Panic of 1857. In many ways, he succeeded because of the lessons he learned during it. He saw the opportunity inside the disaster.
And what happened?
Within 20 years of that crisis, he controlled 90% of the oil market.
That is the power of perception. Realizing that we decide what an event means. We can choose not to be harmed by it.
There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius that fits this perfectly. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Like some kind of Jedi mind trick. I am not harmed. But Holiday gives us a much more intense, visceral example of this principle in action.
The story of Reuben Hurricane Carter.
Yeah, this is a heavy one. If you think a flat tire or a recession is bad, try this.
Reuben Carter was a top contender for the middleweight boxing title in the mid-60s. He was at the height of his career, famous, successful, wealthy, a celebrity. And then in a flash, he was wrongly accused of a triple homicide.
Wrongly accused. and convicted. He was facing 3 life sentences for a crime he simply did not commit. Talk about an obstacle. That is a nightmare scenario.
It is the ultimate nightmare. He went from wearing tailored suits and diamond rings to a prison uniform in the blink of an eye. He lost everything.
But when he arrived at the prison, he made a choice that just defines this discipline of perception.
What did he do?
He looked the warden in the eye and said, "I know you had nothing to do with the injustice that brought me here, but I will not, under any circumstances, be treated like a prisoner."
He refused to accept the identity of a prisoner.
Exactly. He realized that the state could take his physical freedom, they could put him in a cell, they could lock the door, they could take his clothes, but they could not take his mind.
They couldn't control how he perceived himself.
Right, so he refused to wear the uniform. He refused to eat prison food. He bought his own food from commissary with what little money he could get.
And this part blew my mind. He refused to go to parole hearings.
Think about the logic there. Most people would be begging for parole. But Carter realized that asking for parole implies that you are guilty and you need forgiveness or rehabilitation.
So he maintained his innocence with absolute rigidity. He said, "I am not guilty, therefore I do not need parole."
That is immense mental strength. But that also sounds incredibly difficult to sustain. What did he do with his time if he wasn't being a prisoner?
He studied, he read law books, philosophy, history, he wrote, he spent every waking minute working on his legal case. He realized that if he got angry, and he had every right to be angry, if he raged at the injustice, he would just burn himself out.
That emotion wasn't constructive?
Not at all. So he maintained his agency. He decided, I am a free man who happens to be in a building I can't leave right now.
And eventually, after almost 20 years, that work paid off. His conviction was overturned. He walked out.
He did, and here is the crucial part. Because he hadn't let the prison system break his spirit or rot his mind, he resumed his life immediately. He didn't come out broken.
He came out a better, stronger, more educated man. He proved that even in the darkest circumstances, we retain the power to choose our response.
It really emphasizes that perception isn't just about positive thinking. It's about preserving your own sanity and agency.
But let's be honest, most of us aren't in prison. We aren't facing life sentences. But we still lose our heads over much smaller things. We panic.
We do. We catastrophize. Oh no, the Wi-Fi's down, I can't work. Oh no, the client hated the pitch.
And Holiday brings up the astronaut analogy here, which I think is perfect for the modern workplace.
Right. Panic is a luxury we often indulge in. But for an astronaut, panic is suicide.
Let's talk about John Glenn.
When John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth, his heart rate never went above 100 beats per minute.
Never. Even when he was sitting on top of a giant rocket filled with explosive fuel, even when the heat shield was potentially loose and he might burn up on re-entry.
And things always go wrong in space. It's the most hostile environment imaginable.
It is. But astronauts are trained to prioritize one thing, the art of not panicking. Because if you panic, you stop thinking clearly. You react to your fear, not the problem.
In space, if you override a system because you're scared, you die. If you freeze, you die.
So how do we train that out of ourselves? How do we stop the panic when our boss yells at us or the bank account hits zero? Because we don't have NASA training.
Well, one technique the Stoics used, and that Holiday discusses, is stripping things of their euphemisms. We tend to build things up in our heads. We use loaded language. This is a catastrophe. This is the end of the world. He destroyed me.
Marcus Aurelius was great at this stripping away technique. He was the emperor, so he was surrounded by luxury, but he tried to see it for what it was so he wouldn't get seduced by it.
Right. He would look at a vintage Falernian wine, the best wine in the world, and say, this is just aged grape juice.
And a fancy roasted meat dish.
This is just a dead animal. He stripped away the story, the status, and the glamour to see the object itself.
So apply that to the office. If your boss sends you a rude email, you don't say, my boss hates me, I'm going to get fired, I'm a failure. You say,
this is a collection of pixels on a screen forming words. The words express dissatisfaction regarding a specific project. That's it.
It's just information.
It's just information. When you strip away the emotional language, the fear subsides, and you can actually decide what to do about it. You can see the email as a problem to solve, not a judgment on your soul.
That leads perfectly into the is it up to you? Yes, this is classic Stoicism. It's the foundation.
It's the serenity prayer, essentially. We have to ruthlessly distinguish between what we can control and what we can't.
Let's list them out because I think we get this wrong all the time. What's in the can't control bucket?
The economy, the weather, traffic, what other people think of you, what other people do. the past, and frankly, the outcome of your actions.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
It is. You can control how hard you work, but you can't control if you get the promotion.
And what's in the can control bucket?
Your emotions, your judgments, your attitude, your perspective, your decisions right now. That's it.
The Stoics argue that if you focus your energy on the things you can't control,
Yeah.
like wishing it wasn't raining or wishing your boss was nicer, you're guaranteeing misery.
You are fighting reality. But if you focus exclusively on what is up to you, you become invincible.
So once we've calmed down, perceived the situation objectively, and focused on what we can control, there's one final advanced step in perception, and it's the big one.
The flip.
Finding the opportunity.
This is seeing the obstacle not just as something to be tolerated, but as something to be used.
The example here is General Eisenhower and the Blitzkrieg.
World War II, the Nazis are using this lightning war strategy, blitzkrieg. They're moving so fast, punching through Allied lines with tanks and infantry, overwhelming everyone.
It looks like an unstoppable force of nature. It creates a psychological effect of, we are already beaten.
Exactly. The Allied command is terrified. But Eisenhower looked at it differently. He disciplined his perception. He realized that a force moving that fast creates a specific vulnerability.
Physics dictates it.
Right. By stretching themselves out to move quickly, the Nazis were overextending their supply lines. They were creating a narrow salient. They were exposing their flanks.
So where everyone else saw strength and speed, Eisenhower saw a weakness.
He ordered his generals to see it as an opportunity. He famously said, "The present situation is to be regarded as opportunity for us and not disaster."
By letting the Germans rush forward, he could trap them. And that's exactly what happened. The meat grinder strategy.
The obstacle, the speed of the German army, became the way the Allies defeated them.
That is the ultimate goal of perception. To see the advantage in the disadvantage. To ask, how can I use this?
Okay, so let's pause. We've shifted our perception. We're cool, calm, we see the facts, and we see an opening. But seeing isn't enough. We have to actually do something.
And that brings us to part 2. Action.
And Holiday's very specific here. Action isn't just flailing around. It's not just doing something for the sake of it so you feel busy.
It is right action.
Yeah.
Directed, creative, persistent action.
And the patron saint of this discipline is Demosthenes.
The greatest orator in the history of Athens. A man whose voice could sway armies. But the irony is he didn't start that way.
No, he started as the opposite. He was a sickly, frail child. He had a terrible speech impediment, a lisp, severe shortness of breath. He couldn't pronounce the letter R.
And to make matters worse, his father died when he was 7, and his guardians stole his entire inheritance.
So he's broke, frail, and can't speak, and yet he wants to be a public speaker. That's his dream.
It sounds like a bad joke. If you looked at him objectively, you'd say, pick another career, kid.
But Demosthenes realized that action was the only cure for his powerlessness. He didn't just wish he was better. He created a training regimen that was bordering on insane.
Tell them about the pebbles.
He would practice speaking with a mouthful of pebbles to force himself to articulate clearly. If you can speak clearly with rocks in your mouth, you can speak clearly without them.
It was resistance training for his tongue.
Yeah, and he did crazy cardio too, right?
He would run up steep hills while reciting long speeches to build his lung capacity so he wouldn't run out of breath during a debate.
And he would go down to the shore and shout over the roar of the waves to train himself to be heard over a rowdy crowd.
And didn't he build like a weird underground cave to study in?
He dug a dugout where he could work without distraction. And to ensure he didn't leave to go socialize or procrastinate, he shaved half his head.
He shaved half his head so he'd be too embarrassed to go outside.
Exactly. He burned the ships. He forced himself to stay and work. He made it physically impossible for him to engage in distractions.
And the result?
He didn't just fix his speech, he became the voice of Athens. He successfully sued his guardians and won his money back. He essentially built himself from scratch through sheer, relentless action.
The takeaway there is that action cures fear. Action cures powerlessness.
But sometimes the hardest part is just the first step. Just getting moving. We often wait for the perfect conditions. We wait until we're ready.
Until we have the funding or the degree or the permission. But the Stoics and successful people like Amelia Earhart know that you're never 100% ready. You just have to start.
The story of how Amelia Earhart got her big break is wild. I think most people assume she was just invited to fly across the Atlantic because she was already a great pilot.
Not at all. It was the 1920s. Sexism was rampant. She was working as a social worker in Boston, flying on weekends. She got a call one day with an offer to be the first woman to cross the Atlantic by plane.
But the terms were offensive, is putting it lightly.
Unpack the terms for us.
They told her, "You won't actually fly the plane. 2 men will do that. You're essentially a chaperone, a sack of potatoes," as she later put it.
Wow.
You won't get paid a dime. The men will get paid. Oh, and by the way, you might die.
Come risk your life, do no actual flying, get no money, and let the men take the credit.
Most people, especially someone with pride, would have slammed the phone down.
She said yes.
Why? Why would she accept that?
Because she understood that this was a foot in the door, it was momentum. She swallowed her pride and took the action.
She knew that if she got on that plane, she'd be the first woman to cross the Atlantic. And guess what? She got across. She became famous. And because she was famous, she got access to planes and funding. 5 years later, she flew the Atlantic solo.
She used the imperfect opportunity to create the perfect one.
Exactly. If she had waited for a fair offer, she might never have flown at all. She got moving. Action creates new possibilities.
Now, once you're moving, you run into the problem of the sheer size of the task. Sometimes the obstacle is just that the goal seems impossible. It's too big. I want to start a company. I want to write a book. I want to lose 50 pounds.
It's paralyzing.
Yeah. And this is where we talk about the process. And for this, Holiday points to Nick Saban, the legendary football coach at the University of Alabama.
Saban is a winning machine, but his philosophy isn't about winning.
No. He tells his players, don't think about the championship. Don't think about the scoreboard. Don't even think about the next quarter.
Think about this drill, this play, this specific movement. Don't focus on the prize, focus on the process.
The idea is that excellence is just a matter of steps. If you do this step perfectly and then the next step perfectly, the score takes care of itself.
It breaks down the insurmountable into the manageable. It keeps you in the now, because you can't control the score at the end of the game, but you can control how you tackle right now.
There's a great historical parallel to this with James Pollard Espy. He was a pioneer in meteorology, but he couldn't read until he was 18.
Imagine that, illiterate at 18. He feels completely behind in life. He goes to hear the famous orator Henry Clay speak. He's spellbound.
And after the speech, he holds up a poster with big letters, C-L-A-Y, and essentially communicates that he wants to be like Clay, but is trapped by his illiteracy.
And what did Henry Clay say? He didn't give him a grand speech about education. He pointed to the letter A on a poster and said, "You see that, boy? That's an A."
Now you've only got 25 more letters to go.
That is the process in a nutshell. Don't look at learning to read as this mountain. Look at it as 26 letters, one at a time.
It reduces the panic. It keeps you in the present moment. And suddenly, the obstacle isn't a mountain. It's just a series of small steps.
Now, sometimes doing it right or following the rules isn't enough. Sometimes the rules are rigged against you. And that's where pragmatism comes in.
Pragmatism's about results. It's asking what works, not what is the proper way to do this.
And the hero here is Samuel Zemery, known as the Banana Man.
I love the Banana Man story. This guy was a hustler in the best sense of the word.
He was a Russian immigrant who started selling ripe bananas out of a boxcar in Mobile, Alabama. He eventually built a fruit empire, United Fruit's biggest competitor.
And there was a moment where he needed to build a bridge across the Utila River in South America to move his product from his plantation to the port.
But his competitors, United Fruit, had bribed the local officials to make bridges illegal, right?
Correct. The government said, no bridges allowed. A rigid person would have given up or spent years in court fighting the law.
But Zemery was a pragmatist. He didn't care about the definition of a bridge. He cared about crossing the river. So what did he do?
He told his engineers, okay, build 2 long piers, one from each side, reaching almost to the middle.
Piers, not a bridge.
And then in the middle, he put a temporary pontoon that connected them. His trains would roll across, and then they'd remove the pontoon.
So when the officials came to shut him down, he said, "What bridge? Those are just 2 old wharfs."
That is fantastic. It's about not being attached to the method. He didn't need a bridge in the legal sense. He needed to get bananas across a river.
Exactly. Focus on the result. If the front door is locked, go through the window. If the window is stuck, go down the chimney. Don't let the rules stop you from solving the problem.
Which brings us to another way of dealing with strong opposition. Sometimes you can't outmuscle the obstacle. Sometimes you have to use its own weight against it.
Like judo or aikido. We see this with Gandhi.
The British Empire was the most powerful force on earth. Gandhi had no army. He had no weapons. If he had tried to fight them with guns, he would have been crushed in a day.
So he used their own strength against them. He practiced civil disobedience. The Salt March is the classic example. The British had a monopoly on salt. It was illegal for Indians to make their own.
So Gandhi simply walked to the ocean and made salt.
It seems so small, making salt. But it put the British in a bind. If they arrested him and beat his peaceful followers, they looked like brutal tyrants to the rest of the world. They lost moral authority.
And if they didn't arrest him?
Then their law was meaningless, and they looked weak. It was a lose-lose for the British. Gandhi stripped them of their power by refusing to play by their rules of engagement. He absorbed their aggression and let it unbalance them.
So we have directed action, just starting, following the process, being pragmatic and using the obstacle's energy. But what if it still doesn't work? What if you try all that and you still fail?
Then you iterate. You persist. But not just doing the same thing over and over. You try new angles.
Ulysses S. Grant at Vicksburg is the masterclass here.
Vicksburg was a fortress city on the Mississippi River, critical for the Confederacy. Grant spent months trying to take it. He tried digging canals to bypass the city.
Failed.
He tried blowing up levees to flood them out.
Failed.
He tried attacking head-on. Failed. It sounds like a disaster. The newspapers were calling for him to be fired. Lincoln was under pressure to get rid of him.
But Grant didn't quit. He didn't see failure. He saw data. He learned what didn't work. He didn't take it personally.
Eventually, he came up with a daring plan to run his ships past the gun batteries at night and attack from the south. It was risky, but it worked. He took the city.
Reminds me of the famous Edison line. I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
That is the essence of persistence. Finding 6,000 ways a light bulb doesn't work is actually progress. It's elimination. You are narrowing down the possibilities until only the truth remains.
Okay, so we've covered perception, seeing clearly, and action, acting creatively and persistently, but there comes a point where action is no longer possible.
Right. This is the hardest part, the part nobody wants to talk about.
You're in prison, and the appeals have run out. You have terminal illness, the economy has crashed, and the money is gone. There's nothing left to do.
You can't iterate your way out of it. This brings us to the third discipline, will.
How is will different from action?
Action is for when we have agency, when we can influence the world. Will is purely internal. It's for when agency is gone. It is the inner citadel that the Stoics talk about, the fortress inside you that external events cannot shake.
Holiday uses Abraham Lincoln as the prime example here, which is interesting because we think of Lincoln as a man of action, winning the war.
Lincoln is often portrayed as this stoic marble statue, but the man suffered from crippling depression his entire life. They called it melancholy back then.
He was suicidal on at least 2 occasions. His friends had to remove knives from his room because they were afraid he would hurt himself. He lost his mother young. He lost the love of his life. He lost elections repeatedly.
So his life was just tragedy after tragedy.
But Holiday argues that this suffering was his training. By enduring his own personal darkness, he built the capacity to endure the national darkness of the Civil War.
He had learned how to suffer without breaking. His weakness became his strength. His experience with despair allowed him to lead a nation through despair.
Exactly. That is the discipline of will.
Yeah.
It's not about changing the world. It's about changing how you endure the world. It's about saying, this is awful, but I can bear it.
And one of the tools for building this will is something called premeditatio malorum, which sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
It means premeditation of evils, or negative visualization.
Wait, isn't that just worrying? Isn't that anxiety?
No, worrying is emotional and repetitive. What if, what if, what if? This is strategic. It's asking yourself calmly, what is the worst that could happen?
Why would you want to do that? Doesn't that just bum you out?
No, it prepares you. Look, if you launch a product and you only visualize success champagne, high fives, then if it fails, you are crushed. You are surprised.
But if you visualize it failing, if you ask, okay, if this fails, what will I do? How will I recover? Then you rob the failure of its power to surprise you. You're ready for it.
As the Stoics say,
Yeah.
offer a guarantee and disaster threatens. If you expect everything to go perfectly, you are fragile. If you anticipate difficulty, you are robust.
It's about inoculation, emotional preparation, which leads us to the most hardcore Stoic concept of them all, amor fati.
Amor fati, Latin for love your fate.
Not just bear your fate, not just tolerate your fate, love it.
This is the ultimate flip. To not just accept what happens, but to embrace it enthusiastically, to say, this is exactly what I needed.
The story of Thomas Edison's factory fire is the craziest example of this. It's almost unbelievable.
It is. Edison is 67 years old. He's an old man. His entire research campus, basically his life's work, his prototypes, his records, catches fire.
It's filled with chemicals, film, rubber. The flames are green and yellow, shooting 7 stories high. Firefighters can't touch it.
He's watching his empire burn to the ground, everything he worked for.
And his son, Charles, finds him standing there, watching the fire. Edison looks at his son and says, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again."
They'll never see a fire like this again. He's treating it like a fireworks show.
And then he said, "Don't worry, we've just got rid of a lot of rubbish."
That is insane.
It seems insane, but think about the alternative. Should he have wept? Should he have gotten angry? Would that have put the fire out? No.
Yeah.
No, the fire was a fact. It was happening. Edison chose to love it. He chose to see the spectacle and the opportunity to start fresh. He refused to be a victim of the event.
And he was back to work the next day, right?
The very next day. And the revenue his company generated the following year was higher than ever before. That is amor fati, turning "I must do this" into "I get to do this."
It's finding the joy even in the destruction, a level of acceptance that feels almost superhuman.
But Holiday also distinguishes between persistence, which we talked about in action, and perseverance.
Right. Persistence is trying to solve a problem. It's active. Perseverance is something deeper. It's endurance, the long game.
It's the ability to keep going when there is no solution in sight. The example here is Odysseus from the Odyssey. 10 years of war in Troy, then 10 years of trying to get home. Cyclops, witches, storms, mutiny. He just refused to yield.
It wasn't about solving the ocean. It was about outlasting the journey.
Right. And in a more modern context, James Stockdale.
We talked about him earlier in terms of the "is it up to you" test, but his story in the POW camp is really about will.
Stockdale was the highest-ranking naval officer captured in Vietnam. He was there for over 7 years, tortured repeatedly, kept in solitary confinement for years. How did he survive that?
How do you not lose your mind?
He realized he couldn't escape. Action was impossible, so he turned inward. He decided his mission was to lead the other prisoners. He created a tap code so they could communicate through the walls. He focused on something bigger than himself.
That's the key, isn't it? If you focus on, why is this happening to me, you break.
Exactly. Stockdale stopped thinking, why me? And started thinking, how can I help my men? When you serve something bigger, you can endure things that would break an individual ego. He found purpose in the suffering.
And finally, the discipline of will asks us to confront the ultimate obstacle, the one we all face.
Death, memento mori. Meditate on your mortality.
Most of us try very hard not to think about death. We distract ourselves constantly.
We do. We live as if we have unlimited time. But the Stoics, and people like Michel de Montaigne, argue that keeping death in mind gives life urgency.
Montaigne had a near-death experience, right? A riding accident.
He was flung from a horse and nearly died. When he recovered, he realized that death wasn't something to be terrified of. It was just a part of nature. And that realization spurred his writing career.
It gave him the freedom to say what he wanted to say, because he knew the clock was ticking.
It's like, if you know the meeting's going to end, you pay more attention to the scene you're in right now. It brings you into the present. It stops you from wasting time on petty things.
So we've gone through the 3 disciplines. Perception. See things clearly without emotion. Action. Act correctly, creatively, and persistently. Will. Endure what you must and find meaning in it.
And it all loops back to the beginning.
The outro. We started with Marcus Aurelius in his tent. Let's end with him, because there's a story about the end of his life that perfectly sums this up.
The betrayal of Avidius Cassius.
This was his best general, right? His most trusted friend.
Yes. While Marcus was sick and people thought he was dying, Cassius declared himself emperor. He tried to steal the throne. He betrayed everything Marcus stood for.
Marcus must have been furious. I mean, after all that struggle, your best friend stabs you in the back.
Any other emperor would have marched his army down there, crushed the rebellion, and put Cassius's head on a spike. That's the standard reaction. That's justice.
But Marcus is practicing the obstacle is the way.
He saw the betrayal not as a personal insult, but as an opportunity to teach the Roman people about forgiveness.
He wanted to forgive him.
He told his troops they were going to capture Cassius, but they were not to kill him. He wanted to forgive a man who has wronged one, to remain a friend to one who has transgressed friendship. He saw the Civil War as a chance to show the empire a better way.
Now, history tells us Cassius was killed by a lone assassin before Marcus could get there.
He was. But even then, Marcus didn't celebrate. He refused to look at the head of his enemy. He mourned the fact that he was robbed of the chance to grant forgiveness.
He took the worst possible thing, betrayal by a friend, and turned it into an exercise in virtue.
The obstacle became the way.
It's a cycle, isn't it?
It is. Holiday ends the book with this idea. You perceive an obstacle. You act on it. You fail or you succeed, but you endure. And that endurance creates a new situation which requires new perception.
Veers acquired undo.
We gather strength as we go. It's a Latin motto. Every time you overcome an obstacle, you become stronger for the next one. It's like a muscle.
So what does this all mean for you right now?
It means that whatever you are facing, stuck in traffic, a lawsuit, a breakup, a difficult project, you have a choice. You can be blocked by it. You can let it make you angry or fearful.
Or you can choose to see it as a path. You can be a philosopher.
Not in a toga debating in Athens, but a warrior of the mind. Someone who uses these tools, perception, action, will, to navigate real life.
You are now armed.
Exactly. When you are blocked, you are not stopped. The block is the path.
I love that. So here's our challenge to you. Go find your boulder, whatever that thing is that's standing in your way right now. Don't run from it. Don't complain about it. Lean into it.
Use it.
And move it. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.